Hello, everybody. This is Cindy Taylor, publisher of Digital Wealth News, and today I am excited to be speaking with Wyoming's Governor Mark Gordon about all things blockchain. Governor, thank you for joining me today. Can't wait.
Cindy, thanks. I'm looking forward to the conversation myself.
Awesome. Well, I know that we're going to talk about a number of things, but really I'd like to hear about your journey into politics. I understand you're a rancher. I'd love to hear about that background because I understand it is a family ranch, and then there's another one involved from what I understand. And then I'd like to move into your political career because, ranching and, dealing with cattle, moving into politics, I think it's two very different things. But you can share that with us, and then we'd like to wrap up and talk all things blockchain. So take it away and tell us about ranching.
Well, thanks, Cindy. So I grew up in a kind of an independent little town, Casey, Wyoming, known for the hole in the wall, the Johnson County, Chris Ledoux, great country western singer.
Okay.
We still are there. I grew up stacking hay, working on the ranch, and the nice thing about it for folks on the West was after we had the chores done, after we had supper, I could go wet a fly for a few hours every evening, and
Nice.
this good access to the Big Horn Mountains, and so I love climbing, boating, and everything else. In fact, one of the first forays kept the ranch, got married. My wife and I decided we'd start a mail order business. We started that with a very interesting travel company, Abercrombie and Kent, and so.
Oh, yeah.
Provide their guests with all of their outdoor equipment. That was an effort we did through the 80s.
Okay.
So eventually had kids, things changed a little bit. Had a bookstore, movie theater, run all of these things. But I really enjoyed the opportunity to work still on the ranch, and then with Apache Corporation, a major oil and gas operator. We took over a ranch in Buffalo. The Ucross Foundation ran it as a management company with a number of people that was very, very successful. In fact, one of the fun things that we were able to accomplish was with a company up there in Bozeman, actually, we were able to track how much carbon we had sequestered and sell it on, and be able to sell it on the climate exchange. From there,
Interesting.
From there, we got elected to the Kansas City Federal Reserve Bank as a Class C business director, and then the treasurer of state of the state of Wyoming passed away in office. And I was appointed to the treasurer's position, served there 6 years, and then got elected 2 times now as governor. And I'm in
Congratulations.
my second term. So the journey was kind of there. Still love the ranch. Still feel strongly that after
Oh my goodness.
this career is over, I'm going back to ranching. That's, like you said, kind of direct.
Yeah, for sure. Got a very large entrepreneurial background then. That's very cool. And ranching, like I said, I grew up on a farm, and I have the utmost respect for ranchers because I grew up on it. I know you've got to understand how to maneuver through weather. Most entrepreneurs don't have to deal with weather or animals or livestock or crops or equipment and markets. I mean, so it's very interesting how your journey to politics evolved. I know there's a lot of things that Wyoming is doing that's very innovative. We've been covering Wyoming. Very briefly, we had a media company called FinTech News that we sold and then launched Digital Wealth News 2 years ago because we wanted to be back in control and having our own media firm. But we've been following Wyoming and the incredible initiatives that this sparsely populated state has undertaken over the years for a very long time. So I'm really interested to hear about the WHIP initiative, and then I want to move our conversation into blockchain and specifically the YOB education initiative under the guidance of Professor Steve Lupien at the University of Wyoming. And I want to hear about your perspective on all these things and what you can share with our audience about these things.
Yeah, well, let me step back just a little bit and talk about the innovation that Wyoming has been able to achieve in the business climate over time. We were the first state to come up with limited liability corporations, LLCs, and we've kind of continued on from there. I think it's because we're a small, nimble state. Our legislature works very closely with the governor, and as a result, we've been able to really get some groundbreaking work done. One of the first things we did was special purpose depository institutions, what we call our speedy banks, which were basically were depositories for crypto assets. We also did a number of things around blockchain, and I think it became clear early on the opportunities, and I know we'll talk about that blockchain offer not only for the sort of traditional business enterprises, but also kind of a whole new, I guess, grouping of businesses that will get established. So it's been interesting to see how that has developed over time. I mentioned the Chicago Climate Exchange. At that point, our ranch was able to sequester several thousand metric tons annually, and we had through the climate exchange, which was pretty inefficient. So roughly 50% of what we actually got went to the brokerage. Being able to look at how you do that with a blockchain, much more efficient, much greater opportunity. And then one of my goals, because I do believe that ranching is such an important enterprise in our nation, but it's really hard for folks that grew up on a ranch to be able to buy a ranch. If you're anywhere in the West and near a mountain at this point, lands have become astronomically priced. It's really hard to find a way to make a go of it. And so blockchain, again, offers maybe an opportunity to figure out how to fractionalize ownership. I know one of the cool that was contemplated was being able to QR code a cow, and that way, we could say, gosh, that's my cow, that's my calf, that's my inner. A lot of really exciting kinds of opportunities. So Wyoming really has been trying to exploit this area, and it's very new, and a lot of it is kind of geeky, for folks, but others are getting much more interested in it. We know in the West that lifestyles are changing, that a lot of technology is coming to the West, a lot of new enterprises, a lot of new kinds of opportunities. So what we wanted to do is take a look at our education system and figure out how we could meet those businesses where they're coming from, anticipate where they're going, and provide educational opportunities for the students to get them really prepared to enter that workforce.
Yeah. I wanted to go back a little bit. I'm personally very interested in the tokenization of real estate. And you mentioned that, it is an option for farmers and younger farmers who've got not only the price of real estate, but just the price of the equipment. The farming equipment now is just mind-boggling, the pricing of it and the size of it, because we still have farming family back in Illinois. And I know this isn't in our interview questions, but I am curious to hear, are there properties in Wyoming that you're aware of that have tokenized? It's ready to be done, but we haven't seen it done much yet.
So I was going to say, one of the pieces of legislation I had a chance to sign a few years ago was a distributed autonomous organization, so-called DAO. And so this is a new way to kind of incorporate businesses. There is a piece of property in Story, Wyoming, that's now called the Wagon Down. I don't know how successful they have been, but the idea is to tokenize the ownership of it.
For sure. Yeah.
And so they are now doing it. It is an interesting situation because the community itself is very independent, and they don't really have an organized government. So in some ways, a DAO fitting into that should work.
Yeah.
But there's maybe some traditional points of view, and so we'll see how that works out. But that's the first one I'm aware of.
That's cool. We've definitely talked to a number of people who have the platforms to tokenize, and it's starting to get traction. It's just not fully there yet. But I mean, the opportunity is just massive. And what's interesting, I actually had an interesting conversation with Steve, ironically. There's a blockchain group called Provenance Blockchain, and they have 10% of all home equity lines on blockchain in the US. So, if we're not seeing it directly with the properties just yet, we're seeing it with the HELOCs, which I think is interesting. And, it's just, there's a lot to go, but one step at a time. I wanted to jump into a little bit about the Wyoming stable token, which is a hugely exciting, initiative that I know you're involved in. And then we'll end up with a conversation about the YOB education project. So if you want to tell us a little bit about the stable token and what you're doing, what you're attempting to accomplish, we'd love to hear it.
Well, and as I've said, Wyoming really loves to be an innovator, and certainly a Wyoming stable token, it is innovative. But as I also mentioned, we have to see bank structure. It's not really a bank; it's a depository. But we have started to try to move that as a more viable business alternative, settlement alternative, and stable token fits really well within that overall framework. We're going about it in a very meticulous way because, as you've seen with Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX and everything else, we have a climate in DC right now with the regulatory structure that is absolutely against the innovation that we're going to see in blockchain and in digital assets. And it's very disappointing to me.
Yeah, I agree.
Backwards looking at it, having served on the Kansas City Fed, which is itself a very independent minded bank. I'm mindful of the fact that if the regulatory structure in DC continues this, they're going to stifle innovation, and I think it is really misguided to try to clamp down on what can happen. So Wyoming is looking at our efforts here very meticulously, carefully. The idea of being able to establish a stable token that can be used as a means of settlement and is fully backed by a security of we're talking about short-term bonds, or the government bonds, treasuries at this point. And I think if you look at what's happening globally, if you look at what China has done with the EU on, for example, this trend is going to come, and it's going to come somewhat rapidly. It's best to have a place like Wyoming, where we're very transparent, where we are very committed to a strong regulatory structure, and where we can build a framework of laws that not only enable but also can, in some ways, guide the way this can be launched, and so that's kind of a little bit where stable token is. We are out to try to issue a token by the end of the year. We've had several meetings to start with. We just appointed Flavia Naves from Circle to our commission, and a couple of others to really start to understand the the security structure that we're going to have, the security legal structure that we're going to have to be able to make this alternative going forward.
It's interesting. And I think once you establish that groundwork, then I think other states that are somewhat like-minded will start to, jump on the bandwagon and hopefully follow the regulatory structure that you've gone through. I think that's one of the things that...
If I may, Cindy, that's what's really frustrating at this point about the federal regulatory structure. Because, we developed this in plain sight. The CD structure. We worked carefully with our banking commissioners. They're also connected with the Kansas City Federal Reserve. We kind of tried to. I want to be very careful. Nobody at the Kansas City Fed said, "Oh, this is great," but they were aware of what we were doing and had a role to play. So it's really frustrating at the Board of Governors level. When I had a meeting with Governor Lael Brainerd, that she was saying, "Well, we've got to see what happens in Atlanta. We've got to look at what MIT's doing." And I do understand it's the Federal Reserve is a federal institution, but I think that predilection of those DC, New York-based regulators to talk about it's bigger, better, and more central is really misguided and unfortunate. And as you point out, the work that we've done is now publicly available. So first mover status is somewhat at risk. You've got places like Florida, Nebraska, Colorado. My good friend and Governor Polis is also very much competitive about this, and so it really is frustrating. You do the work, you lay it out there, and then you're signing until a federally appointed regulator finally says, "Well, after the big guys can do it, we'll let you have a hand at it."
Very interesting. I wish we could help you in some way, but I appreciate you guys. You know what you're doing. You're bull forward, just pushing forward and blazing the path. And that's not always the easiest path. It's not easy to be the innovator or the first ones out in any industry and any political situation. But I know that I'm hugely thankful for the work you guys are doing. I know that our readers are, and just keep pushing it and knowing that you've got support. And we appreciate the work you're doing, and at some point, they're not going to be able to stop the tide. So that's where I'm at. So thank you for that. I think we've covered a lot of really important topics here. I really want to finish up our conversation with the thing that's close to my heart. As you know, we're very thrilled to be working with Professor Steve Lupien on the YOB Education Initiative. We're working with a group to develop 12 modules for high school juniors and seniors in Wyoming and their community college counterparts. And we're also working with Steve to also bring this to the rest of the United States, because we think it's such an important initiative that we want the kids of our country to know what this is about. But I would love to hear your perspective on this directive, how you've been involved with Steve as this has unfolded, and where you envision this going, and what this you're hoping this will accomplish for the state of Wyoming.
Well, Steve has been hugely helpful in kind of helping design and think about how we can educate around blockchain. We talked a little bit earlier about the Wyoming Innovation Partnership, which is a way of connecting our community colleges with our university. Steve's been really in the center of that. And I think the work that's going on with YOB, developing curriculum and also text to go with this couldn't come at a better time, because it's, there's a lot of, we talked a little bit about geekiness and open source sort of software pieces of how this all works. But for somebody who is new to blockchain, new to the concepts, and really the world is opening up with all kinds of opportunities there. What this course can do is give you the groundwork to be able to understand it, help fuel the imagination and the innovation that can really expand. And you know, you've talked about tokenization of real estate. Obviously, a very great use case for it. We talked about fractionalization of cattle. We talked about tokenization potentially of ecological services, that anything from water to CO2 in the atmosphere, just to store value in a digital asset. The fact that it's quick and an easy way, familiar way to be able to look at how banking goes, it's really going to be revolutionary. And so what we hope will be the catalysts to be able to really educate a new workforce, think about new ideas, and really share that with the world.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. And I'm excited about it because, you know, I've spent time in Wyoming. We love Wyoming. We're registered in Wyoming. Yay. Steve has tried to get us to move to Cheyenne. So far, we're in Bozeman, but we'll see. But, you know, I think it's really important. I mean, for kids to learn and understand this technology, and it doesn't need to be intimidating. There's a lot to it. There's a lot of complexities to it. But, you know, I think that if we can just get our children and young adults educated on the basic fundamentals, then they can figure out where they want to take that information, maybe create a new company or, you know, go down a certain career path and help, you know, bring in more companies that are blockchain focused to the state of Wyoming, because Wyoming's where it's at in the United States.
Well, thank you for that. And I absolutely agree with you. And, you know, Cindy, just sort of one sort of thought about all of this is so much technology is happening so rapidly. And you think about which blockchain you're going to put a particular endeavor on and how it's going to go, how you want to be able to custody it, any of those kinds of things. And then you think about the advent of artificial intelligence and AI, and suddenly you begin to realize how important it is that we have an education system that teaches creative thinking, teaches, capitalizes on innovation and imagination. And so it really is an exciting time. We hope Wyoming is really the catalyst for that.
I think Wyoming is the catalyst. Governor, thank you so much for your time today. This has been an incredible interview. Just all the praise in the world to y'all for the innovation that you're doing in this directive, and just keep pushing forward. Keep pushing forward.
Thanks so much. A joy to have this conversation. Thanks.